Have you ever seen someone who seemed to have it all? Money, power, respect. The kind of man who could make a single phone call and change the course of someone's life. A man who never waited in line, never worried about bills, never questioned whether he'd made it. That was Hiroshi Tanaka, one of Tokyo's most brilliant architects. He was the mind behind skyscrapers that touched the sky, the man whose designs shaped the city's skyline. Every piece of glass, every steel beam, every shining tower, a reflection of his success. He lived on the top floor of a penthouse that overlooked the city, a view most people would trade their lives for. But every night, as the lights of Tokyo flickered below, Hiroshi sat alone, his reflection staring back at him through the glass. A man surrounded by everything and connected to nothing. Because when the lights went out, when the emails stopped and the applause faded, there was only silence. Not peace, not calm, just the echo of a life that looked full from the outside, but felt painfully empty within. He built towers that touched the heavens, but somewhere along the way, he forgot how to touch a heart. For years, Hiroshi told himself that this was the price of greatness. Work hard, sleep less, sacrifice everything. He convinced himself that loneliness was just part of success, that happiness could wait until he reached the next level. His days were measured in deadlines, his nights in glowing screens and silent dinners. He spoke to hundreds of people every week, clients, contractors, investors, yet no one ever really spoke to him. He ate alone, slept alone, celebrated alone. And each morning, when the elevator doors closed behind him, he wore a new mask. Confidence, control, perfection. But there were cracks in that armor. Moments when his eyes lingered too long on the faces of families laughing in restaurants. Moments when he envied the old man feeding pigeons in the park, because at least he wasn't pretending to be happy. And then one night, after closing another multi-million-dollar deal, Hiroshi walked into his empty penthouse. No congratulations, no warmth, just silence and a half-finished bottle of whiskey. He looked out at the city that had once inspired him, and for the first time, it felt cold. He realized he had everything, except someone to share it with. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Scrolling through his phone late at night, he stumbled upon a short video. A group of Filipino children dancing and singing in the rain. Their clothes were torn, their feet were bare, but their laughter, it was real. So real that it hurt to watch. He replayed it again and again. Then, without thinking too much, he booked a flight. No plan, no reason, just a feeling. A whisper inside him saying, "Go." He packed one small bag, a camera, a journal, and a white shirt. He left behind his suits, his office, his schedule. And for the first time in years, he didn't tell anyone where he was going. Destination, the Philippines. He didn't know what he was looking for. He just knew he couldn't stay where he was anymore. The moment he stepped out of the airport, the air felt different, warm, humid, alive. The noise wasn't from traffic. It was laughter, chatter, life itself. He took a long bus ride to a small coastal town he had never heard of. Colorful houses lined the road. Kids waved as they passed. Old women sold fruit by the roadside, smiling at strangers like they'd known them forever. When Hiroshi finally arrived, he looked around, confused. No skyscrapers, no luxury, no noise. Just the ocean, shimmering under the sun. A tricycle driver noticed his hesitation and asked, "First time here, sir?" Hiroshi nodded quietly. The driver smiled and said, "Then, welcome home." Those two words, "welcome home," echoed in Hiroshi's heart like a language he had forgotten. That evening he walked to the shore. Children were playing barefoot in the sand. An old radio played a love song in a language he couldn't understand. And for the first time in years, he smiled, not for business, not for photos, but because he simply wanted to. Days turned into weeks. The villagers began calling him Kuya Hero, Brother Hero. He helped fishermen fix their nets, joined families for meals under the palm trees, and learned to cook rice over an open fire. Every morning, someone would knock on his door just to check if he had eaten. Every evening, laughter filled the air as neighbors shared stories under the stars. He couldn't believe it. In Japan, everything was planned: schedules, meetings, even emotions. Here, life just happened. He learned that in this place, wealth wasn't measured by what you owned, but by how much love you gave. One day, during a heavy rainstorm, his small hut began to leak. Before he could even react, 3 neighbors came running with buckets, hammers, and smiles.
"No problem, Kuya. We share," one of them said, laughing. And as they worked together, soaked to the bone, Hiroshi felt something he hadn't felt in years: belonging. He began writing again. Not contracts, not blueprints, but poetry. About kindness, about simplicity, about home. And one Sunday, as he sat quietly during Mass, he heard the church choir singing, voices soft and full of hope. He didn't understand the words, but somehow, his eyes filled with tears. He didn't need to understand. He could feel it, and that was enough. Months passed, and then a call came from Tokyo. His company wanted him back. A new contract, a bigger position, double the salary. For a moment he was tempted. The life he'd built was calling, the old version of himself whispering, "Come back." But as he looked out at the ocean, he saw children chasing waves, fishermen hauling in their catch, and a woman singing while cooking rice over the fire. He smiled, and with a calm, steady voice he said, "Thank you, but I'm already rich." He hung up the phone and never looked back. Hiroshi stayed. He used his savings to open a small seaside cafe. He called it tahanan, a Filipino word that means home. It wasn't fancy, just wooden tables, sea breeze, and music that played softly in the background. But people came, locals, travelers, strangers who left as friends. He served coffee, cooked meals, and listened to stories. And every evening, he'd sit by the door, watching the sunset paint the sky in gold. On the cafe wall, he hung a simple wooden sign that read, "Happiness isn't something you build, it's something you share." And slowly, word spread about the Japanese man who found peace not in a penthouse, but in a small cafe by the sea. In Tokyo, he built towers that touched the clouds. But in the Philippines, he built something greater, a heart that finally knew peace. Because sometimes, you have to leave everything behind to find the one thing you were missing all along. Not wealth, not power, but love, freely given and impossible to buy. Some people chase success their whole lives. Others find it the moment they stop running.